Hello and welcome to today's webinar. Well, our theme today is live streaming, and this is what we concentrate on for today's 30 minutes or around about 40 minutes. Well, to doing such a webinar, of course, we have some limitation to demonstrate all the live streaming capabilities and options, of course, and also how all the connections, so please be patient. The based on today's webinar is that you have the understanding for the GVC GYHM650 how you can bring it to the network. That means to a local network or to the cloud. Well, you have three choices for this one. One is using Cat45 directly to a fixed LAN connection, or you can use a Wi-Fi connection, or it is 3G or 4G. Mobile phone device connections. Anyhow, that is the base you already should know before we're talking on the wireless or on the streaming functionalities. Well, let's start with some practical few points, and then let's have a little chat about the theory about all this kind of connection and where you have to take care of and have you to look through. Let me switch the image quickly to my desk here. So we have a few points to the hardware. Let me do the image a little bit smaller. So what you can see here on my desk, first of all, is this little box here, which is a hardware decoder, which transfer the streaming file, which you get over the cloud, over the network, directly to an SDI output and bring back into your normal digital video working operation workflow. Also, you see the GYHM650 and you see a mobile phone here. Well, the mobile phone is theoretical, you can stream to it, but this is not the idea which I want to show you. The mobile phone is later on to give you some interesting hints about some nice tools which coming not from us but third-party applications which can you makes your life by analyzes any web functionalities and makes your life quite easy to find any problems or find out some solutions why or where is not working. Anyway, with this we come later. Let's start with a decoder. Well, we can use a hardware decoder or we can use a software decoder. In this case, I use a TerraTech Cube 355 or 305. Let's have a little bit closer look to that cube. Well, let's start here from this side. As you can see, the Cube 355, and by the way, you can use any other decoder device, of course, but I use that as a reference sample here. The Cube 355 has a nice feature here, which has also the capability to using Wi-Fi connection. This is actually for today's demonstration. I use a point-to-point connection between the camcorder here and the box itself. Furthermore, the box has also an option here to have a directly Cat45 connection to your local network. And on the other side, when we look here, we have the status displays. So there's a very easy setup. You can do it here with these knobs. You can do the setups. Of course, if you connect it to the local LAN, you can use also a web browser. There's a built-in web server, so you can administrate the full box. Also very comfortable by web. But anyhow, there's a quick solution here by all these settings, so you can see your status if there will be cable connection. Or here, for example, in our case, you can see there's the broadcasting from the camera. You can see the IP addresses here. So it's very easy to use, and even the setup it's quite easy. So you push, you're coming through the menus, you can set up your output resolution. By the way, it scales down in the direction from SD 1280p or 1080i. That's all possible with that unit. The only, let's say, a little bit weak point is de-interlacing here. So if you know the most streams are interlaced streams, so maybe then you use a de-interlacer behind the box. Or you use, of course, 1280 720p with 25 frames or 30 frames depending on the area. You come out with a ProSF signal. You have your network settings and so on and so on. So it's quite easy to use. To use the unit here, you have a AC/DC connection here. But this unit has also, it's quite nice, it has also a built-in battery. So one time it's charged, you can use that for a couple of hours. You can use that without any network connection. Could be sometimes very useful. Of course, there is a headphone audio control, and also you have the SDI output to your local net. So that is number one, which we're working to. Let's go a little bit back to the camcorder itself. So when we use now the camcorder in our demonstration here, I'll give you a short explanation which kind of bottom you really like to use for your settings. Well, you have your standard menu bottoms here and you have the cursor bottom over here. Well, you can use that, or what is more common, or which I use already, is the cursor bottom here and the menu bottom here, which doing the same job as the bottoms here. So this is we're going to use today. Also, we're going to use the status bottom just to catch up the information which we need. And we do a connection. Of course, keep in mind the 650 is the IP capability that makes it possible to do the live streaming. I use the USB host here, and I use a wireless connection here. It has a very small, tiny Wi-Fi dongle which I connect. But keep in mind, you can use a 3G dongle or a 4G dongle, or you can use a Cat45 USB converter here. So it don't care which kind of system you use. For our example today, this works as an access point, so we make a point-to-point connection to the Teratech decoder. Well, let's have a look to the setup. Let's start a quickly view to the menu points. Let me do that, and let me do this. I go a little bit up. So when we use the camcorder here on the screen on my side, that's the typical screen. Well, normally you have an image there, of course, and you can see the camera is working. So I close the iris so that you have a better option to view to the status information. Well, the GYHM650 is a dual encoding machine. That means we need one encoder to doing normal recording, and the other recording is using for live streaming. That makes also the camera fully independent. That means you can record anytime when you want, and you can start to stream and stop the stream anytime when you like. So it's two functions basically in one camera. To do the streaming, you should have to do some pre-preparation. Well, streaming over the network in the quality of streaming is a reference by the quality of service which you get from the network. So for example, if you have a 3G connection, with your GSM dongle, well, you cannot stream 3 megabit because the network is not allowed to do so. So you have to go down to maybe 800 kilobit or 1.5 meg depending on your area. That you have to find out. Another point is that you should clear yourself when you want to use the dual function, let's say recording and streaming at the same time. You should make your judgment which kind of format you're going to record. For example, in the case of SD recording, you cannot stream HD, you can only stream SD. If you stream 1280 720p, you want to record it, you can stream, of course, 720p and SD. If you're going to 1080i as the recording at the highest level, of course, then you have all open issues. You can stream SD 720p and 1080i. So this is one point you have to be clear before you start your streaming. If your goal is to record in SD, you can stream only in SD. If your goal is to have the highest quality on your SD cards recorded, 1080i, Then of course you have all option to streaming. It doesn't matter if you have 1080i or SD streaming. That you should be clear before you start up. Another good point is that this camera with the latest firmware, by the way, today it's a new firmware, it's coming up 2.08. The regular one yesterday was 2.06. We have some fixes in it, is a 2.08. Anyhow, it is important that the camera has a lot of capability for streaming. So today you can start up from 300 kilobit into the regular production here. 300 kilobit is starting up the base for beacon signals. You know that beacon needs even come down to less than 250 kilobit. That will be one of the next generation of updates coming very soon. So the camera can start just with a satellite telephone as a data connection. You can go with the SD streaming up to 5 MB, so you can have a very high quality SD streaming, of course. You can use a 720p, which starts from 1.5 megabit up to 5 megabit streaming. And you can use 1080i, which starts from 1.5 up to 8 megabit. So 8 megabit is then, of course, if you have a local network connection or you use a satellite, movable satellite connection that goes up to 10 megs. So even you can use this camcorder. So you have a full bandwidth and you can always adjust the camera to the best connection options you have. That's all open. Oh, let's start to the menu. Of course, what I mentioned to you, you should have some basic for doing the normal web connection. So just roughly to have an overview about this, we go into the camera menu. And of course, we have go into the system because this is a system setup. Well, first of all, I mentioned to you, you should be clear which kind of record format you have. This is exactly what I explained before. You have the HD recording or you have the SD recording. That you should make clear. When you want to do streaming, that has nothing to do with this sentence here, HD plus web. HD plus web is a dual recording. That means HD quality on the card A, on the SD card, and on the slot B, you can record a web format, which is 480 or a half HD resolution, 960 pixels, which works perfectly for the web application or for web videos. So in the case of live streaming, you must make a selection one of these two, SD or HD. That is one important part. Anyway, I make no changes here. And you can see I use 1280 720p. The reason for this one is simply by my complete network change, including my PC, which is here, going to my mixers, etc. So I work on 720p here. So then the next step in this system menu, we go down and keep in mind to do live streaming, we must give free the network operation, actually, which you can see here. That means HDMI is off, SDI is working, and our network operation is generally on, so we are able to do any network operations. Let's go down to the next settings, and there we have our web settings. Of course, first of all, we have to do a connection setup. Let's quickly jump in. We can use the wizard, or it's already designed, then I can load the setup, but I do the wizard. You can see I have a wireless dongle here. Go ahead, and then I can make a judgment. I go over an access point or router. This is number 2 or the number 1 P2P, also point-to-point connection. This is what we have today. Let's go ahead, and then we have a selection about VPS or manual setup. Well, VPS is an automatically procedure for the network handshaking. For example, very nice for wireless settings. If the receiver and the transmitter has this function, you simply push them and then do all the setups for yourself. But I like to prefer to use the manual setup. That is also better to doing such a seminar because you have to understand the background of it. Let's do manual. The camera gives you an SSID. Of course, you can change that if you like, but this is, I leave it like it is. This is the camera broadcast signal for the Wi-Fi, because in the case of point-to-point, the camera gets an access point like a router. Of course, we have a VPA2 web key functionality in this camera. When we make a point-to-point connection, this is the phrase or our key. I'll leave that also in this way. And then our setup is rather finished, very easy to do. So if you like, you can store it or whatever. That's our website. Well, before we go to the live streaming setup, let's have a quick viewpoint when I go back. Let me make a full screen here quickly, and let me jump into that screen for you, like this, so I can show you here our application. Well, this is all mirror, and there we go. Here we go. There we are. Okay, there, over there. So you have to see this sign here gets then yellow or it gets white. When it's white blinking, that means there is no adapter. When it's yellow, the adapter is found. And when it gets stable white, then you have the network connection. If you want to review this information, please go to our website, go to the DSC download. There is the web seminar a couple of weeks before, which I did for the GSM, that I go closer in this application how it is. Anyhow, we can press the status button. The status button I want to show you quickly here in the screen. That is over here is the status button. Let's push that, and you can see our network setup. So what you see here is the point-to-point SSID, which you see before. You see this is a VPA security type, and then we have our web key. Well, I have already a connection. If you don't have a connection, there will be no IP address. The IP address will come up when you have a valid access. Well, going just like this, put it here in the back. Let's give you simply here an overview on the receiver bottom. This is our, remember, this is our TerraTech coder, and I use the Wi-Fi. Let me jump in this. Here we go. That's a little bit moved, and we get in focused. Here we are. So you can see here, you have a setup in this decoder that works exactly like you use your mobile phone. If you switch on Wi-Fi, you're searching your Wi-Fi point. In this case, it's the HM650, and then you enter your web key, and then your connection will be established. It's exactly the same issue with here the unit. I will not going through because it takes too much time, but you can see here it comes to a connection, and my decoder gets an IP address from the camera, which is 192.168.0.1.1. This number is very important later on for our setup for the live streaming. Well, let's go back. Let's go to the external signal. Here we are. So let's go back to our live settings. The connection we already have done. This is the basic. That is what I mentioned to you. You have to understand in the previous. So, and now you will see how easy it is to doing the live streaming setup. Well, we're going to our main menu, going to the system again. You're going to the same menu item as we did our connection before. Going to the settings, jumped in, and there you find the live streaming. Well, go in. The first is you set your resolution. In this case, for example, SD, I can change maximum to 1280 720p because my general record set in the moment is to 720p. When I change to 1080i, you have the full bandwidth here. Let's go look to the SD. Here is one very important information. If you're going to change the resolution, that is like a system, general system set. That means the camera will be reboot. It's needed because all the processing have to be matched. If you're doing a reboot, it's like switching on and off. The camera needs a moment to re-establish the connection. That's very important. If you switch, the camera is rebooting, and then immediately you start to push the live streaming, that will not work. You give the camera a moment and you have to check that your network connection is already there. So change the resolution. Needs is a rebooting. It's like switching on and off. You have to make sure that your network connection is valid and it's back. Well, then we have to select the frame rate. You can see it's actually quite easy. We go in here 0.3, 300 kilobit at today. Again, we will very soon we will go down to less than 250 kilobit, including audio and video streaming. So you can go into the desert, use a satellite phone as a data connection, and you are able to do live stream. Of course, the quality gets down, but it's still good enough, believe me, for such an application like a breaking news. You know that when somewhere is war and you see these images, that works quite well. And you can go a very high resolution screening here, up to 5 megabit stream for SD. You see the I set at 60 Hertz because this is based on the PC on this webinar here. This is PC frequency. Of course, here in Europe, you will be changed that to 50 Hertz anyway, your total system setup. Well, that's all. You select just simply the bit rates, what you want to use. The next is the type of streaming format. On the today's camera, you have two choices. One is TCP and one is UDP. The live stream generally is H264, but it will create an MPEG-TS stream. These two options you have. If you're asking for RTMP connection, like you're going to the CDN, that's not possible. RTMP is not possible today. But if you're going to the CDN, that's normally no problem. For example, I use the provider. Today, this webinar, the image what you see going to a German provider, which is Blitzeinschlag. This is the company which support the webinar here. I can use the camera directly to stream to their CDN server. It's only a negotiation with your partner to open you a UDP port and control instead of RTMP. We have shortly in the future, we will have also some error corrections in a dedicated format, but I will talk then in another seminar in the next year. Well, this is a setting, typically is UDP setting. And the last two important settings actually is the destination IP address. And keep in mind, this is exactly, and I'd like to show you that here again with the screen here. Hold on a second. Well, which camera I have active? This one should be active here. Yeah, well, there we are. So keep in mind when you're looking now to the screen. Right, let's go a little bit back. So here we are. And here's our status information. You see that it's the IP address of our box here. And this is our destination address. So you have to tell the camera right over here in the corner, you have to input exactly the destination address. As long you are in a local network, if you are outside of a local network, that's a different point. I will talk to you about that in a few minutes. In the theory how you have to do that. So in case of our point-to-point connection, this is our destination, this is the destination address, and I have to input this address. Quite simple. Well, this is already done. And the next one is a port address. Well, the port address, there is a setup in when we go into the menu items here, there is inside the network and decoder setup. There is also a mode which kind of stream I have, and you can see I have the settings here. There is the protocol type and the port address, and you can see is port 6500, which is my decision actually. The port number, you have over 65,000 ports, which you can take any number actually. But there are some reserved ports like port 80 and port 21. I think the most people of you know what is port 21 on the network, which is a normally FTP protocol, or the port 80, which is used for HTTP websites, web servers. So, but frankly speaking, you can talk with your network administrator and they can give you a port into your local network. For example, in this case, I select port 6500. I can use port 10,000, whatever. It's actually my decision to do that. So port unchanged. Okay, let's go out of the Well, this is what you have to input. It's your decision which kind of port you use. And that's all. That's really all. Again, select your resolution. Select your bit and frame rate. This normally kept unchanged. Select your destination address and select the destination port. That's it. Now you can start your live streaming. Well, to use the menu is not so comfortable, and last week I make a short seminar which explains you special features, and now we can use our special feature. Simply we go out of our menu, go to the camera function, go to our user switch sets, and take one of our selectable user bottoms like the number 6 here for live streaming, which is I already did. So what does it mean, number 6? Well, I show the camera, when I show you the camera here in front of me, oh, you can see that we have all these bottoms here, bottom 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and also here, 1, 2, 3, 4. This is number 6, by the way. 1, 2, 3, 4, 4, 5, 6 here. So this is number 6. So I can use simply this bottom to start live streaming. Well, how comfortable it is. I talked to you that this is 2 independent functions. So I can push my record button here. You can see record is running. You can see that here on the screen. Well, I'm in a conference, so I don't miss any part. Even I'm not live streaming. I do all the recordings right on the machine. And then suddenly say, well, now it's the part I like to do live streaming. So I push, and then you can say live streaming starts. You get the message on the second red area information. Well, you say I'm on live, I don't need the normal recording anymore, so you can stop the recording, but you're still doing live streaming. You're still doing live, it's fully independent. Or you do a recording, you have the backup doing the live streaming, and you can stop the live stream whenever you want. So even you have a network lost, which you get a message by a blinking tail lamp, it will be flash when you have a break. Well, you have to make a new establish of the connection. And maybe you miss something, but don't worry, you still have it recording here. Of course, in a live there is always a little bit risk. And keep in mind, it's not an issue on the camera, it's just the network capability. Well, it's simple like this. Let's talk a little bit in theory. You know, you have seen I have to input destination address. In our example today, it's quite easy. We use a point-to-point connection from the camera directly to the Teletech decoder. But in the actual field, you maybe use a GSM connection, 3G or 4G. So, and then you need to have a destination address. The destination address, if the decoder is in your house, it has the local address based on your network setting inside the house. But this is never the IP address which your company is going to outside. So you have to know your official IP address before you jump in your local network. Well, there's another issue what you have to clear up is with your network administrator, you must do a port forwarding. Keep in mind, I said port 6500. My official IP address is X. My address inside the company is Y. So, but I have to tell the router, I get the information on the port 6500, and the router needs to know this port 6500 must be go to the address Y to my decoder. Well, it could also a software decoder, doesn't matter. So that calls port forwarding. This is very important. Another point is when you're starting to do this live streaming and not have a connection, please check your firewalls. If your firewalls is blocking the IP address or the port, you will not get a connection. So as you can see, it's in the most situations not a question about the setup of the camera. The camera only gets to the internet, and then you set up only the addresses where you want to stream to. But if the signal will not come to this, in the most cases is block it somewhere. And this is the most issue by getting from an official point to a local network. So you have a proxy between, you have a firewall between, or even if you use a software decoder, it's on your PC. Maybe the firewall on your PC is blocking this connection. In case of such a TerraTech cube, there is no firewall here, so it's just by the router itself. Well, let's look a little bit in theory on the chart. I prepare quickly the chart here on top. Let's have a quick view to that. That's what's me here today. Well, let me do opposite. My screen here, and let's do the PC on here. So here's a little hint for you. And by the way, I have on the DOC download, you find a live streaming guide. There is some explanation how you use a VLC or how you use a TerraTech decoder and make a connection with some examples. So that is a good help after this training. So I'll open a first page to have a look to it. Well, here you can see a nice example is using a USB adapter. And the USB adapter is a Cat45 adapter, which makes this Cat6 connections for local network up to the TerraTech and then to your monitor. Well, such application could be very useful because live streaming not only means that you're from far, far away. Such a solution could be very interesting. For example, you have a big auditorium and it's very difficult to install video lines or glass fiber lines, whatever. So, but in most cases in such buildings, a local network already is there. So with a nice negotiation with the web administrator, maybe you can use the local network to get your signal to a dedicated place where you want for the conference or for your recordings or whatever you like to do. So that could be a very interesting point. And keep in mind, this is the fastest signal which you have on the cable wired connection. You can use 8 megabits per second in that network and to get 1080, nicely 1080i image. Well, the other solution is actually what I have shown you here on the webinar today. The only difference here, there is a Wi-Fi dongle which we have, and then this connection use a router in between. I'd make a point-to-point connection directly to the TerraTech, but this is also a solution. That's quite nice for nice demos if you are in room A to room B and there's no network, no cable, or you on the open field. Keep in mind if you have a Wi-Fi connection, it could be work up to 300 meters depending on the router, on the aerial system on the router. You have also an option, of course, to use instead of 2.4 gigahertz, you can use 5 gigahertz. At the moment, it's not so crowdy, but keep in mind if you use 5 gigahertz, the distance on the Wi-Fi is not 300 meters, maybe 150. But it's more secure because in the moment it's not so crowded. Don't make any presentation or don't use this wireless connection into kind of an exhibition or something else. In an exhibition it's totally crowded. Even normal mobile phone will not work really. As you know, going to IBC, NEB or something else is totally crowded for the web application anyway. Yeah, and last but not least, and I think that's the most people are interesting to use such kind of connection, which you see here on the screen, using a GSM dongle. Well, keep in mind, the US is easier. You can use one dongle, it works the whole nation. But in Europe, as you can read everywhere, 4G, the high-speed network, has rather limited more to the main towns. And there are a lot of countries in Europe which have still no 4G connection. But if it is there, of course, you can do live streaming in a very high quality. In the case of 3G, you can do nicely SD streaming, but you have to make sure that is a valid, good service. You can check that with your mobile phone. That's the tools which I come later on it. Well, here is a good example is we're streaming to the cloud, to the internet. We make an internet connection. Then we need to have the official IP address, which is your WAN address. And then we have a router here, and the router makes a port forwarding over the router up to the your decoder. In this case here, for example, a Teratech decoder. Well, here also some rather quick helps. Let me put my screen away a little moment. So I would like to open a normal web browser. Well, I'm pretty sure if you have you listened today for the streaming webinar here, I'm pretty sure you're already expert into doing networking and how to find an official IP address. I'm pretty sure. But there are still sometimes people which is something new and they listen for the interesting to do it. Here's a very simple hint how you can find out your official IP address. You open the web browser in your local LAN. This is exactly what I do here. And then simply type in my IP. You don't need any tools, nothing. Just type in my IPs and you get a huge kind of websites which offer you to find out your IP. Let's take the first one here. So, and immediately you can see this tool shows you the official IP. For example, in my case, if I connect it here, I have any number like which you have seen today, 192.168.0.101 for the Teratech decoder, but my outside IP address is exactly what you see here on the screen. And let me switch just here on the side. So here in the lower area, the first IP 212.144.226.50. This is at the moment my official IP address. So when I want to do the streaming, I open here my unit, and just to remind you, let me switch that back on the side, make it a little bit bigger. So when we want to do the streaming right now, you're going to your camera system, and I want to do streaming to that network. The only what I have to do, go to the setting, go to the live streaming, and input this address 2211 into this area. That's it. Well, then at that point, my camera will stream to that address. But I want to stream, as you know, to my Teratech decoder. And this is the point where you have to talk with your network administrator. He has set up the router. If on this IP address, on the port 6500, for in our example, a signal is coming, please transfer all informations to the local IP address. Example, our case, 192.168.0.101 on the port 6500. Transfer this information, and then you're ready and you can work. Well, this is the only, let's say, hint and let's say trap which could be happened. So keep in mind, if you're outside your company, you need to know your official IP address. There is another trap for this official IP address. It's depending on the country, it's depending on your network contract which you have. For example, here in Germany, it mostly happens if you have a regular contract that after such amount of time, exactly here in Germany at midnight, the IP address will change. So you get a new IP address. So when you today you use the official IP address, tomorrow it will be a different one. Well, you can pay some extra, and then you can have a fixed IP address, and that solves the problem. Okay. So at the final, I mentioned to you the mobile phone, and let me switch to my my mobile phone in here. Let me open use an application, and that's let me do some quick hints for you regarding some applications on the mobile phone. Here we go. Well, we're talking about IP addresses and whatever, and Wi-Fi connections. First of all, I like to make a quick show on a nice application that's called Wi-Fi Analyzer. This is an Android phone, of course. The most application you also find for the Apple phones, for the iPads and whatever. It's sometimes very nicely on a pad. So these tools are very good for servicing. First of all is the Wi-Fi Analyzer. So you can use the Wi-Fi Analyzer, open it, and it will check your 2.4 or 5 gig. I'm not sure. I know that iPad, I think 3 and 4 are not able to control the 5 gigahertz area. Definitely here this Android phone can do it. I'm not sure if iPad 5 can do it, but anyway, this is maybe some limitation which you have, but the software can check 2.4 or 5 gigahertz. You easily can see which kind of networks are running here. This is my, this is the camcorder which I already have, so it's very strong because it's right over here. But this gives you a good message if you have troubling with your networking, with your streaming, with your FTP or web remote or whatever. If you have an overlap frequency range, maybe it's necessary to change the channel on the other network. But in the case of a point-to-point connection, it's always automatically setting. You have no influence. But in the case you use a router, then you have a possibility to select. But it gives you very nice information. Also, if you're streaming, you can do network settings, test level settings, quality of servicing, which is the best channel, whatever. It's a very nice tool, and you can see how stable your traffic is, if there's a break or not. This is the Wi-Fi Analyzer. Another very nicely application, it's called Fing, F-E-N-G. This is this application here. I open it. And this is a network analyzer, so you can see your network. You get all your IP addresses which is valid in the network. You can go to one of this part, push that. If I push that here, you can go to the check the quality of services. You can scan the services. For example, you can see if this port 80 open, port 21 is open. It's exactly, it easily shows you if you are some blockage. So for example, if there is the port 21 on the device is open, but you are not able to make a connection, then maybe your firewall will block it. So that's also a very nice tool to use. At last, we're talking about streaming, and we're talking about streaming. What is the real reality? You use a 3G or 4G connection outside. Well, then it's good when you have a mobile phone which use the same provider. So that gives you two hints. You can see what kind of connection you have. The only limitation is that Wi-Fi dongles are a little bit less sensitive as a mobile phone. So a mobile phone always have a little bit more sensitivities based on their constructions. Anyhow, you can do a network test, and there is a nice tool. You find that also on the web. It's called Speed Test, and this is provided by the company Okla, O-O-K-L-A. So, and that makes a connection, and then you can make a speed test. So it checks the ping timing, and then it checks the downloading time, and it checks the uploading time. And as you can see, my limit here of my data connection on my phone is break down. So I have no checkpoint. But anyway, if you have a connection which is lousy, like here in a moment, there is no way to make a streaming with 1.5 megabit, even 0.8 megabit. So I use only Haspa here, which is a very, very low connection. So this gives you a short information how your data connection could be. Of course, your limits should be open. My limit here, I use that often here for the training and all for the application here. So my limited. In Germany, we have limits. If you have a flat rate after a certain amount of downloading, there it's limited your speeds. Anyway, this is a good tool to have that on beside when you're working with it. Well, that's only just a mention you if you have here the mobile phone into the front. Let's close the address. Well, again, on the DOC download, there is you find a document which gives you simply help of this kind of setting in detail, and you can spend your time and do your experience. If you have any question, again, we have the chat box here. You can give me some question here, or there is also telephone number mentioned where you are directly connected to my studio here. If you have question where you want to talk with me, you can do that right now in the next 10 minutes. And that's for the last seminar. By the way, it will be recorded here, and tomorrow it will be also on the DOC download, so you can have a review on the talks here. And yeah, well, that's done, and I guess we see us next year. The training calendar is not finished right now, so we will have some new issues, etc. And also, if you all have a special request for doing a training, not only on the GYHM650, we can do that also on other products. Let me know, please. My contact data is there. I wish you a very nice Christmas day and also a happy new year, and God bless you. Bye bye.